Let's talk about the future tense. So the simple future is straightforward. It's something you use every day. Something will happen in the future. So you say that he will be something or he will do something. And sometimes you would also say that he's going to do something or something is going to happen. But that's usually in speech, and in formal writing, we would try to avoid that. And so when you're writing essays for school, try not to use the going to, but stick to your will for the future tense. It is obviously an event in the future, something that hasn't happened yet, but sometime in the future, tomorrow, next year. There is a bit of a distinction between the will and the going to. We'll talk about that. Will is usually for events that are unplanned, and going to is for events that are already planned and decided on and is going to happen. Now, that is, in some cases, that distinction is made. In most cases, was about when you talk about something that's going to happen in the future and it's just a fact that's bound to happen, then you can use either one, like it will rain tomorrow or it's going to rain tomorrow. So in those cases, it doesn't make any difference. But in other cases, this will and going to, there is a slight distinction, and we'll just talk about it briefly. So the basic form is that it's an event in the future in a statement like, the president will make America great again. And that's his motto. And we'll put it in the future tense because it hasn't happened yet, at least at the time of this recording. It hasn't happened yet, and that's his promise for the future. So we'll use it in the future tense. So what about this will versus going to? Well, consider this situation. The teacher in the front of the class says, "Who wants to erase the board?" She says. And one student raises up his hand and he says, "I will do it for you." This is in a case where this just came up. The topic just came up. It's not planned or thought of, but the student there is showing his willingness for one thing, willingness to do something, and also that the decision was made just there at the spot. He is showing his momentary will at that time. Whereas going to would be, the teacher says, whose turn is it to erase the board, she says. And the student would say, Sally is going to do it today because it's already planned out. The situation is that the schedule is made for students to take turns. Whose turn is it? Which one is scheduled? It's planned out and it's already determined in the past. In those cases, we would use going to. Let's go on to the future progressive tense. Future continuous also. This is the will be doing. So in a future time, you're going to be doing something. So it is an event going on at some specific time in the future. So on the timeline, we're at C. If we talk about D, like tomorrow night at 8 p.m., at that time, I will be doing something. So here in this sentence, we have 9 p.m. I will be studying if you call me at 9. So if you call me at 9 in the future, I will be studying. This action will be going on at this particular moment in time, and that's your future progressive tense. And the future perfect tense is your will have done. I will have done something. This is a future event taking place before a specific time in the future. All right. So let's consider the time, the tense diagram. When we talk about the perfect tenses, the word perfect doesn't mean like you're perfect, I'm perfect, that kind of perfect. The definition of perfect is complete. That something is complete, completed before another time. So when we talk about the present perfect tense, we're saying at this present moment, before the present, some action was completed before the present. What about the past perfect? When we talk about this particular point in the past, some action happened before that is completed before that point in time. Well, same thing with the future perfect. When we talk about tomorrow 9 p.m. or next week Friday, let's say this is Friday, before that time, between now and that time, some action will have been completed sometime before then. We don't know when, it doesn't matter when, but it will be a completed state by that time. So that action is going to happen sometime between now and that point in the future. And we have to be clear on when that point in the future is. So if we look at the sentences, we have, I will have finished my report by Friday. So there's that time that's specifically stated. And here's your verb, I will have, and that's the necessary part there, will and the have. And your past participle will have finished. Okay, look at the other sentence. If you're leaving your house just now, the movie will have ended by the time you arrive at the theater. So this is obviously, situation is, I'm talking to my friend, and my friend, I'm waiting at the theater, and the friend says, hey, I'm just leaving my house. So I tell them, hey, if you're leaving your house now, I'm already at the theater. If you're leaving just now, the movie will have ended by the time you arrive. At that time in the future, when you arrive, the movie will have ended. The movie will be done with. All right, so that's your future perfect. And those are the 9 forms of the tenses that we looked over. I hope you have a pretty good idea of how these 9 different forms fall into the categories, how they fit well with each other. And all you have to do is just memorize a couple of terms, the progressive and the perfect. And there's logic to those, right? Progressive is something that's going on. And the perfect means that it's completed before that time.